Nobody tells you the truth about work. They tell you to study hard, to be disciplined, to stay patient. They tell you that if you do everything right, life will eventually reward you. That's the lie. Because most people who followed every rule didn't fail. They just never won. They wake up early, they commute, they sit in places they don't respect, and they give most of their energy to something that doesn't belong to them. At the end of the month, they get paid, and almost all of it disappears. Rent, bills, food, small distractions to forget how weak they feel. Then it starts again. Slowly, work stops being about growth. It turns into survival. And survival leaves no space to think clearly. When you're surviving, you don't ask big questions. You don't take risks. You don't build leverage. You just try not to fall behind. And here's the part that hurts. People don't stay stuck because they're lazy. They stay stuck because they're trapped. School never taught you how money actually moves. Jobs never teach you how value is really created. They teach obedience. They teach consistency, but they don't teach ownership. So you keep going, not because it's working, but because stopping feels dangerous. If this feels uncomfortable, good. Comfort is how people stay stuck. And now we need to talk about the part nobody likes to admit. Most people are not underpaid because they lack effort. They're underpaid because their work is replaceable. That sounds harsh, but look around. If you disappear from your job tomorrow, someone else is trained to sit where you sit. The system depends on that. You were never meant to be rare. You were meant to be useful. And usefulness is capped. You're rewarded just enough to keep showing up, not enough to question the structure. This is why people work harder every year but feel poorer. More responsibility, same leverage. Inflation rises, salaries crawl, and the gap grows quietly. Nobody announces it. You just notice one day that your money doesn't stretch anymore. And by then, you're tired. Too tired to restart. Too tired to learn from zero. Too tired to risk looking stupid again. So you cope. You tell yourself this is normal, that everyone feels like this. And that's the trap. Normal doesn't mean healthy. Most people don't hate their job. They hate the feeling of being stuck inside a life they didn't consciously choose. Weekdays feel heavy. Sundays feel short. And years start moving faster because nothing changes anymore. This is the real cost. Not money, awareness. Because once you see this clearly, you can't unsee it. And pretending everything is fine starts to feel exhausting. That's why distractions are everywhere. Endless content, endless noise, endless consumption. Silence would force people to confront the truth, and truth demands responsibility. Responsibility is heavy, especially when you're already tired. Here's another uncomfortable truth. Time doesn't feel expensive until you realize how little of it you actually control. Most people don't own their schedule. They borrow it. Borrowed from employers, borrowed from bills, borrowed from expectations. And they never consciously agreed to this. The longer this goes on, the harder it becomes to imagine a different life. Not because it's impossible, but because imagination requires energy. And energy is the first thing survival takes. This is why people settle slowly. Not in one big decision, but in small compromises repeated for years. I'll do this just for now. I'll change later. Once things calm down. Later rarely comes. Life doesn't slow down to give you clarity. It keeps moving. And one day, you realize you've become very good at managing a life you never truly wanted. That's the quiet tragedy. Not failure, adaptation. And here's the hardest part to accept. No one is coming to interrupt this pattern for you. There is no moment where life taps you on the shoulder and says, "Now you're ready." People wait for permission that never arrives. They wait to feel confident. They wait to feel certain. But certainty is a luxury survival never gives. Years don't pass because people chose wrong. They pass because people never chose at all. Once you see this clearly, things start to make sense. Not in a hopeful way, in a grounded way. You realize the problem was never motivation. It was structure. You were placed inside systems that reward compliance, not independence. Systems that benefit when you stay predictable. That doesn't make you weak, it makes you normal. Most people are doing exactly what they were trained to do. Work, earn, spend, repeat. And when something feels off, they blame themselves. They think they need more discipline, more confidence, more patience. But patience doesn't change structure. Awareness does. And awareness is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. You can't say, "I didn't know" anymore. That's why many people avoid this stage. Not because it's hard to understand, but because it's hard to live with clarity inside a system you haven't changed yet. There's a quiet phase after this. You stop complaining. You stop fantasizing. You stop consuming noise that keeps you distracted. You start observing instead. How money actually moves. How power actually works. How leverage is really built. This isn't exciting. It's sobering. But it's honest. And honesty is where real change quietly begins. Clarity doesn't demand immediate action. It demands honesty. Honest about where you are. Honest about what isn't working. Most people rush past this part. They look for motivation, because motivation feels active. But activity without understanding just creates more noise. This phase feels quiet because you stop reacting. You stop chasing every idea. You stop pretending small distractions are rest. You begin to notice patterns. Who owns assets? Who controls distribution? Who gets paid without trading hours? This isn't about copying anyone. It's about seeing reality without filters. And once you see it clearly, going back to ignorance becomes impossible.